Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Karthik, and I'm the co founder of GSEO. And today we are here to interview Deeta. So, Deeta is a high school student at West Windsor Plainsboro High School North, and she's the founder and executive director of Project Youth FinLit, which is an international nonprofit focused on financial education for youth. She has also served as research assistant at University of Pennsylvania, where she's conducted economics research. In addition to that, she is also a pre-professional ballet dancer. So quite interesting to hear from you, Deeta, today. Could you introduce yourself a little bit, please?
Hi, my name is Deeta Sarvanan and I'm 17 years old. I grew up living in around the metro Atlanta area, and then at 16 years old, pretty much last year, I moved to Princeton, New Jersey. And it's really been interesting getting experience in two very different regions of the United States. And I would definitely say living in Princeton, New Jersey this past year has been very eye opening, especially in the academic realm, because there's so many research opportunities, not just with Ivy League universities like around me, but also just opportunities in general because I'm so close to New York. And so that opens up a whole bunch of opportunities. So it's been really interesting learning kind of how to navigate that, especially because I'm so new to it. But I would definitely say it's been a great experience for me.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. That's amazing to hear. And so I've been through your LinkedIn profile, and it mentions
Mhm.
that you're a research assistant at UPenn. So could you
Mhm.
explain a bit more to us? What were the most interesting aspects of your economics research that you did there?
Mhm. So, around April of this year, I got this position to be a student research assistant to a PhD student at the Perelman Center for Political Science and Economics. And my role was I was helping her work on her paper for her thesis, basically examining the quadratic effects of diversity on teamwork and performance, which basically the premise of that is some of the least diverse and some of the most diverse students are working well together rather than a mix, which was
Okay.
kind of interesting to hear. But my role in that was basically providing her with literature. So I would conduct literature reviews for her,
Okay.
I would say every 2 weeks,
Okay.
basically giving her benchmark papers that she could reference in her paper,
Mhm.
um, either with the quadratic role of a variable of interest in various other economics papers, or if I could find papers on education or teamwork or collaboration in educational settings, because the whole research experiment took place in a microeconomics class at UPenn.
Okay.
So we were trying to find benchmark papers for both of that.
Okay. Okay. I see. I see. And how did you come to know of this opportunity? Was it provided by your school?
No, so actually, I emailed a bunch of professors and PhD students at all the schools near me, and I've written a lot of like research over the past year. And so, along with the cold email, I sent my resume, and then as well as like a short research article I wrote. It was like 2 pages. I think it was on a pretty interesting topic. It was on the implications of AI and machine learning on the labor market. And I think I
Mm.
wrote it pretty well, and it ended up getting me a research assistant spot at UPenn. And I didn't get an exact position at Princeton, but I'm currently working on a project with a PhD student at Princeton. And
Wow.
she like messaged me back saying she was really interested in my paper that I wrote. So I think writing that paper definitely helped me a lot in sending it along with the emails.
Wow, that sounds quite cool working with both UPenn and Princeton, that too in research.
Mhm.
So that's quite interesting to hear. Within your research, what were the biggest challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
I think for me, especially, one of the toughest parts about research is it was very new to me, and also at first it felt very mundane and boring because there's so much you need to prove. There's so much kind of like fluff writing. I wouldn't say
Mhm.
exactly fluff writing, but I feel like I was just so used to just if I had an idea, I would just get to the point and just express it or make something out of it. Like, especially with my organization, Project Youth Finlit, it's very much like if I want to do something, I can just do it
Mhm.
and it's done. But I feel like the tough thing about research is, especially as a high school student, you're not very exposed to it. So getting
Mm.
into it at the start is, I would say the transition is pretty difficult, and figuring out how to properly academically write is something a little bit different because it's not super similar to writing in school, I would say.
I see.
And obviously, you need to have all of this like academic diction and stuff like that. But I would say just figuring out formatting, figuring out how you exactly want to structure your research, and also figuring out how to properly research using academic databases is definitely probably one of my biggest struggles.
I see. I see. And you mentioned about, having the right academic diction, having the writing in research is different from the writing that you do in school. So how did you develop these skills necessary for writing research papers? Were they just, you know, by experience, or was there anywhere that you learned from?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say at the start, my writing was very not up to par. But I'd
Mm.
say my biggest tip is to look at other research papers. I think what helped me the most is when I was conducting literature reviews for my um, at UPenn. I examined so many research papers every week, like almost close to 25, just reading through them, getting familiar with the format, getting familiar with the writing style definitely helped me a lot. And I started by writing smaller research papers, like 1 or 2 page, and submitting them to like shorter essay contests. And then over the past summer, I actually worked with a friend of mine to publish a like 10 page research paper. So that definitely, the experience that I got from writing those shorter articles definitely helped me a lot.
Mm, I see. I see. Okay, that's quite interesting to hear, and that's actually some good advice as well. So have a look at research papers beforehand, so be able to know the format. It's quite important. Okay, okay, I see. And you did your research in the field of economics. Could you explain
Mhm.
to us a bit how you first got interested? What sparked the interest in economics research for you?
I would say always throughout middle school and high school, I've always been super interested in business and finance.
Mm.
It's always just been like my interest field, but not really economics. And then I would say once I moved to New Jersey, and I actually participated in something. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's the New York Fed Challenge for high school students.
Okay.
So basically, it was a competition run by the Federal Reserve of New York, and we got to kind of write a paper about kind of the shift of AI in the labor market. Something I also wrote about in my essays. But it was super, super cool writing that paper, and it was actually with a group of people, and it was just super cool to hear ideas bounce off of each other. And I think that moment I really realized that I loved how economics, it wasn't just kind of social, or it wasn't kind of just, it wasn't either completely like mathematical, or it wasn't completely social. Because I feel like finance was just super numbers all the time,
Yeah.
not as much like thought behind it, not as much interpretation. And then business, I feel like was almost a little bit sometimes too much interpretation
Mm.
without a proper mathematical understanding behind it, or like a proper reasoning behind a lot of things. So I feel like economics was the perfect like halfway point between having being able to articulate your own thoughts on certain issues, but also being able to use concrete evidence to back that up. And I think that's what got me involved in economics research as well.
Wow, wow, quite an interesting story to hear. And how do you see your economic research contributing to your long-term career goals? What do you think?
So, while I love doing economics research,
Hmm.
I'm not exactly sure I will be doing a PhD in economics. I know that's a super
Okay.
popular route for a lot of students interested in economics, but I definitely think I'm going to major in economics in my undergraduate education, and I definitely want to get involved in as much economics research as I can, just because I think it's such a powerful thing to hold under your tool belt, and it gives you so much knowledge and so much experience that you can definitely take into the workplace, whether that be for internships. Like I know so many current PhD students or current students who majored in economics undergrad are currently interning at the Fed or interning at the World Bank. So it truly gives you so many more opportunities.
Interesting to hear. Okay. All right. Okay. So thank you so much for those answers. Now, next section we'll be moving on to questions about your high school. So,
Hmm.
you're currently a senior at West Windsor Plainsboro High School North.
Hmm.
Could you share us any defining moments that you had, some memories that stood out for you during your high school experience?
I would say the most defining moments for me probably were my extracurricular work with DECA and FBLA.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure. Is there a DECA in Indonesia?
Yes, I think there should be one. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Competing in DECA, I was an officer in DECA, I competed in DECA, and I think that is one of the only clubs that I truly put a lot of time and effort into that was like part of my school because I'm pretty busy like outside of school because I go to dance right after school almost every day.
Mm.
So it was like hard to make time for like certain clubs outside of school, but this is what I definitely made the time for. And I think one of the highlights was probably winning at DECA Internationals in 2023. It was such a crazy experience. And then like 2 months later, I won at FBLA Nationals, which was
Wow.
super, super exciting. I think that was like such a fun time of my high school experience, especially like with my school, because I would definitely say my most favorite memories from high school would probably have to be outside of my school or like with other organizations.
I see. I see. First of all, congrats for your two wins. That sounds quite cool. It's really, really amazing to hear that. Um, you've been a part of a lot. You're also doing ballet outside of school, and you're
Mhm.
part of DECA as well. How did you manage your time? Do you have any tips that you'd like to share?
Yeah, of course. Surprisingly, I get this question a lot, and I think that's just because some people get a lot like, or like, how do you manage the schedule? But I definitely say a lot of it is mental. I feel like if you think it's a lot, it's gonna start getting a lot. But I always try to think to myself, like, um, it's not a lot. I'm not doing a lot. And I feel like my schedule, you definitely just get used to it over time. Like
Mm.
for me, I go to dance after school and then I get home at like 7 p.m. Usually start my homework at 8 p.m. and then I allow like 8 to 10:30 or 11 for homework. And then afterwards 11:30 to like I try to be in bed by like 12:15. I just save that time for um research work or my like organization project youth finlit or like other out of school work related to my major, but I definitely say I can get a bulk of this work done over the weekend. So like all of my research assistant work I try to get knocked out on Sunday and things like that. But I would definitely say you do get used to it over time, and it definitely helps if you love what you're doing. So obviously I get tired and stuff, but I
Mm.
think like I really like enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy all of the work that I do. So it's really not too much of a, oh, I have to do this. It's more enjoyable.
I see. I see. Oh, that's really, really interesting to hear. And you mentioned about your Project Youth Finlit. Could you elaborate more on what the project is, and how did you get inspired to start it?
So I started Project Youth Finlit the beginning of my sophomore year. And I was
Okay.
inspired to start it because I would always go to teach at my local middle school as part of my DECA chapter. And I noticed that a lot of students kind of had a disconnect with financial literacy and its
Yeah.
application in the real world. Like, I remember running a stock market simulation, and the students did great. They had a great understanding of like what to look for in a stock. But when I asked them how the importance of investing and how that could help them in the real world, they
Mhm.
didn't really give me any great answers. And I realized there's a big disconnect in youth, especially. And we don't want youth who are ill prepared financially and with low financial literacy entering the adult workforce. So
Okay.
I actually wrote around a 20-page paper for my DECA competition about this project that I initiated in my community. And it was called Project Youth Finlit. So we started off going to public schools, middle schools, and elementary schools in the metro Atlanta area and teaching them like 1 hour workshops on financial literacy. And then we actually expanded abroad. So we started doing
Okay.
virtual lessons in China and Korea through other organizations.
Okay.
And then we also have our third program, which is specifically targeted for underprivileged youth who don't really have access to
Mm.
computers or don't have access to like any video call we would be able to do. So we would send brochures that I made, and then brochures as well that we had volunteers. They were volunteer for us and make these brochures, and they were all outlined with the respective countries' economic education policy. So, like the U.S., we have the U.S. Council for Economic Education. So when we switched to different countries, we would try to use relevant topics outlined by their nation to make it as applicable for them. And then recently, probably in the last few months over the summer, we've developed this educational platform basically. So it's a platform with modules specifically targeted for students 6th through 8th grade. And the purpose of this is we're going to have students enroll in our program. And once they complete, they have a bunch of quizzes and tests to pass. If they get an 85% or above on all three tests after
Mhm.
completing all three modules, then they will have officially graduated. And part of our program, we're tying up with some local corporations as well as some financial institutions to offer
Okay.
them $50 once they graduate to kind of learn how to practice with their money responsibly. I think what's super cool about our program, we're kind of incentivizing financial literacy for both students as well as letting corporations and organizations contribute to a better good.
Wow. Wow. That's a really nice cause. You've expanded internationally as well. Did you
Mhm.
face any challenges when communicating with different agencies, when collaborating with, like you said, the U.S. has their own economics agency? Did you have any issues with that?
Mhm. I would say it was definitely difficult, but one thing that helped so much for us
Mhm.
was we were able to have a lot of volunteers from a lot of different places around the world. So, for
Okay.
example, we had volunteers from China, Korea, Turkey, Africa. So, while we were not teaching them, that they were able to help us learn more about their country. And so, if we had any difficulties kind of catering our materials towards certain students or trouble contacting local organizations, they would always be super happy and super willing to contact them through their side, which was super, super helpful for us, as well as it helped us kind of get more international volunteers and have more people know about our organization worldwide.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And so, one other thing that you've done involved with finance and economics was you've been involved with the Young Investor Society.
Mhm.
So, how has your Global Student Advisory Board experience? How has it expanded your understanding of finance and just leadership in general?
Yeah, so Young Investor Society is a very cool organization. I actually just joined last year, but I had the wonderful opportunity of going to the summit at Bloomberg and at Cornell
Right.
in May. And I think that's what really solidified me wanting to be a bigger part of this organization, just because it's truly such an amazing organization, and they do such a good job of bringing together teens interested in finance as well as the top business and finance executives. Like
Okay.
at the summit, there was close to I think like 190 um,
Wow.
like business professionals in finance coming from Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase. And I was able to make such good connections with so many of them that I realized like this is so important for students. It's a lot different than my organization. I would say I'm pretty much targeting youth, like very young children, just trying to give them an intro knowledge of finance and financial literacy. Whereas I think Young Investor Society is very much focused on high school students who are looking to go into finance. Especially things like the global stock pitch competition. We were supposed to prepare a 10-page report, basically pitching a stock, either a recommendation to buy or sell. And I picked Airbnb. So I
Okay.
think that experience definitely taught me so much. And I also love how the Young Investor Society um, kind of has its board of students and both finance professionals from around the world, as well as um, a lot in the country. So I was able to make so many good connections with other students living here in the US, as well as students living all across the world. So, working with the student advisory board, so far it's been super cool. We're kind of responsible for providing a lot of the student feedback. We're kind of like the voice of the students, and kind of telling the administration what we want from YIS and also what we hope to see, as well as helping manage all of these organizational activities such as Dollar a Day Challenge,
Mhm.
and these fireside chats, and just being present at all of them, trying to increase student involvement, as well as running their social media, which has been super cool.
Amazing to you. That's pretty nice. And one more thing that I would like to discuss is your ballet interest. So it's quite
Mhm,
interesting. You know, not a lot of people who I know are interested in something like ballet. That's quite
mhm,
something new for me to hear. Could you explain about how did you get interested in this? Was it from your childhood?
mhm. So kind of surprisingly, I started ballet. I wouldn't say late, but late for the like level that I wanted to get to. I
Okay.
started at 12, and I think I started because I just always loved to dance, and I did Indian classical dance growing up, but I never did
Okay.
ballet. And then I think probably at 12, I was like, I really want to give this a try. So
Okay.
I started in ballet, just like an intro level class. And then I think when the pandemic hit, I had a lot of free time. So I would practice a lot, and I would say I would basically train every day, multiple hours a day.
Wow.
And then the following year, I decided this was still like pretty much lockdown. They just had slightly opened things up. I decided I was going to compete in the Youth America Grand Prix competition, which is a
Okay.
really big ballet competition worldwide. And so I competed, and then afterwards, I had the like director of the competition like pull me aside and kind of asked to get to know more about me, because she definitely could see that I was like new to the ballet competition scene, and I think she just saw a lot of potential in me, and she sent my audition video out to a bunch of schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was definitely super helpful because it kind of showed me that I might be able to like have a future in this and keep going in this, and that I had
Okay.
some form of potential. And then since then, I joined a pre-professional like ballet school, and I pretty much
Mm-hmm.
train every day except like 1 or 2 days a week. But it definitely gets a lot. I would say last year, especially because I competed in a lot of international ballet competitions,
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely super difficult to manage with missing school. But I would say I truly love my experience so much, and I think it's taught me so much more about the world. Um, and that's I'm able to translate it into so many other different fields. It's taught me a lot of how to interact with people of different cultures, especially
Okay.
because the past few years I've went abroad to train. So I went and trained in Monaco, and then I went and trained in London. And so I basically had to live with complete strangers from all around the world, but I love them so much, and you just get so close with people so fast. And I've learned so much about different cultures, and I have such a big appreciation for so many different cultures because of ballet.
That's nice to hear. That's quite sweet to hear. You mentioned about Monaco and London. Could you explain what were the experiences like? Going to different countries to learn something like ballet. How was it?
I would say it's definitely probably one of the highlights of my high school experience. I would say,
Mm,
going to Monaco, I was 16, and it was definitely, I would say Monaco was a lot more difficult than London, just because they speak French, and I would say it's not a city like Paris where it's super touristy. I would say Monaco, the city itself, is touristy, but we were kind of near Nice, France, and
mm,
when I went, it was not a big tourist destination. It was not as big as it is. So I found that, especially the part where I was living,
mm,
not that many like local people knew English, and I was kind of living in a locals area. It was a very different experience than going as a tourist because you were kind of basically forced to like live there. And then at the academy, I was with a bunch of students, and I think it was difficult because I was one of the only American students. There
okay.
were so many students from China and Korea, Italy, Spain, and I feel like it was definitely they Europeans have their own culture, and
Yeah.
even though they're from different countries, they're usually able to kind of have like more conversations in this
Mm,
weird blended language than I would be able to understand. But I would definitely say getting that experience was so eye opening, and figuring out how to communicate with people when you don't speak their language is something that's
mm.
super, super important that I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to kind of learn about. And then London, I recently went to London in July actually
Oh, wow.
to train at the Royal Ballet School, and that was such a
Mm,
good experience. I loved London so much. I would say there were definitely a lot of people from a lot of different countries, but because it was in London, I feel like a lot more people spoke English, and it was just so much easier to communicate with the people that I was with. And also, I think just because I was older, we were able to have more freedom and really
mm.
be able to experience like London culture. And we would go to like all of the tourist locations as well as we were kind of living in a very local area. We were living in Pimlico, so it was so nice to get to experience kind of both aspects of it.
Cool, cool. Going to two different countries, that's for ballet. That's quite interesting to hear. And from your experience in ballet, apart from the dancing, obviously, what do you think are the most important lessons that you can take for which you can apply to your future career or your university life?
Yeah, I think probably the most important one is just the power of discipline and the power of sticking with things because when I first started ballet, obviously there was so much to improve. I was like seriously so behind from a lot of the people my age just because I started so late. But I think also a super important thing in real life is also no one's journey is the same. And also just because it took someone else like 6 years to get on point doesn't mean that it will take you 6 years. I think it's
No.
super important to sometimes we mentally create scenarios of our head in our head based on other people's like experience and be like, oh, like I don't think I can do this. I don't have enough time. But I think
Mhm,
ballet has really taught me that those narratives to just honestly disregard them and just follow what is right for you.
mhm,
And then on top of that, it's just taught me the power of discipline and how if I put in all of this work into one thing that it truly ballet has provided me with so many benefits. And I also know that in college I'm really interested in joining like my school's dance company and things like that. So I think it's just an art and a skill that I can take with me throughout my life, and I think it's super personal to me and also a big part of who I am. So I think I will always just keep it with me.
perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. So I guess with that we can end our interview here. Thank you so much, Deeta, for your beautiful answers and for your amazing advice. I really appreciate your time and your answers today. All right. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
no.